Good morning, everyone. In this webinar, we'll be focusing on something crucial for effective teaching, lesson planning. Today, we are going to explore the components that make a lesson plan truly effective, ensuring that each session is clear, engaging, and beneficial for our students. First of all, a warm welcome to each and every one of you. It's wonderful to see you all again taking time out on yet another Saturday morning to be here with us. Let's work together to craft lesson designs that are effective, clear, and can truly help our students grasp concepts in a meaningful way. Thank you once again for being here. Let's make the most of this time together. So before we dive into the content, let's take a moment to look at what we aim to achieve today. Our first objective is to understand the components of an effective lesson plan. We'll break down what makes a lesson plan not only structured but also engaging and adaptable to the needs of our students. Secondly, we'll learn how to create lesson plans specifically for our virtual classes. So, teaching virtually, especially in our rural settings where students share a single screen, presents unique challenges, and our lesson plans needs to be designed to address those challenges. And finally, by the end of today's session, you'll develop skills to create structured lesson plans that are clear, organized, and easy to implement. This is crucial for ensuring that every lesson is focused and delivers value to your students. These objectives will guide our session today and we'll work through them step by step. By the end of this webinar, I hope you'll feel more confident and equipped to design lessons that fit the unique needs of your virtual classroom. So now moving on to what is a lesson plan. So in simple terms, a lesson plan is a detailed guide for teaching a specific concept or a topic. It helps you stay organized by outlining the key components you'll need, like objectives, materials, the flow of activities, and how you will check for understanding of the students. A well structured lesson plan keeps your teaching focused and ensures that students follow along and achieve the lesson's goals. We'll dive deeper into these elements in the next slide. Now let's take a look at the key components that make up a solid lesson plan. The first one is setting objectives. This is where it all begins. Your objectives define what your students want to learn by the end of, what you want your students to learn by the end of the lesson. So clear objectives keep both you and your students focused. For example, if you are teaching addition in a math lesson, an objective might be students will be able to solve simple addition problem using two-digit numbers. Then the next one is identifying materials. So you will need to gather the materials necessary for delivering your lesson. These can include textbooks, worksheets, questions, or even digital tools like videos or slides. For instance, in a science lesson on force, if you like do showing your students a demonstration, you might need a video demonstration of pushing and pulling objects. Or if you are thinking of performing an experiment, you might even need to ask the CA to gather all the materials required for the experiment. So that's all, these all things come under identifying materials. Then the next is check for understanding. It's essential to regularly assess whether your students are grasping the concepts. This can be through questions, discussions, or a quick quiz during the lesson. So, for instance, in an English lesson, after teaching new vocabulary, you could ask students to use the words in a sentence to ensure that they have understood. So, together, all these components create a clear, organized structure that helps guide both you and your students throughout the lesson. So, as teachers, we know that every class and every group of students is unique. Because of this, there isn't a one size fits all method for teaching. That's where lesson planning strategies come in. These strategies provide us with different approaches to structure our lessons in a way that's both effective and adaptable. So, throughout this session, we'll explore a few key strategies that can help you design lessons that are not only clear and organized, but also tailored to meet the diverse needs of your students. So, one of the most popular and research backed strategies is the Maitline Hunter lesson plan model. This method offers a step by step guide to planning your lessons with a strong foundation. It helps ensure that you engage your students' present information clearly and check for understanding throughout the lesson. So the Maitline Hunter model is especially useful in virtual settings because it provides a well-rounded approach combining both structure and flexibility, which is crucial when working with students in remote environments. So in the next slide, we'll walk through the different steps involved in this model, and you'll see how it can be applied effectively to your lessons. So now let's see the steps of the Maitline Hunter lesson plan. So first is the anticipatory set. This is where we grab the students' attention and engage their interest in the lesson. It's like an invitation that makes them curious about what's coming next. Then comes the objective or the purpose. So clearly explain what the students will learn and why it's important. This helps students understand the goals and makes them feel motivated to achieve them. Then comes the input step, which is nothing but the instruction step. So in this phase, we provide students with the new knowledge or skills they need. This is where the core of the lesson is taught. Then comes the modeling phase. Here we demonstrate the skill or concept so students can see it in action. The teacher shows exactly how to perform the task. Then comes the guided practice. Students practice the skill with your help. This is a collaborative phase where students are actively working while still receiving guidance. Then comes the check for understanding. So, throughout the lesson, we need to continually check if students are grasping the material. This can be done through questions, quick assessments, or observations. Then comes the independent practice, where the students finally apply what they have learned independently. This is where they practice the skill or the concept on their own, demonstrating their understanding. Then comes the last step, which is the closure step, where you wrap it up by letting them reflect on what the students have learned. Now, let me give you examples from lessons, or like how you could design lesson plans for subjects in science or math. So, if you are teaching about force and motion to the students, so the first step is the anticipatory set. So, show them a video of a car being pushed or demonstrate it with a live toy car. What happens when we push or pull this car? Why do some objects move faster than others? Something like this. Then let them know the objective or the purpose of this lesson or concept, that today we are going to learn about force and motion. So by the end of this lesson, you will be able to explain how force affects the movement of the object. Then in the input phase, you have to like explain that force is nothing but a push or a pull that can make objects move, stop, or change direction. So here you are actually like giving them the knowledge or the skills. Then in the modeling phase, you have to do it like you can do something like this. You can tell them like, let me show you how actually what happens when you apply force. So push a toy car and explain how applying more force makes it to move more faster, while less force makes it to move more slower. Show how pushing in different directions can change the direction of the car in which it is moving. Then in the guided practice phase, ask them like, let's do it together. Have students use objects whatever they have, like book or any toy, like to experiment with pushing and pulling. Guide them as they observe how different amounts of force affect the object's movement. Now, in the next phase, like check for understanding. What do you think will happen if we push this object harder? Why did the car stop when we stopped pushing? Ask questions to assess whether students understand how force affects motion. Then comes the independent practice, like where the students do it by themselves. Like ask them to do practice it with different objects at home. Like have students test pushing or pulling different objects like balls, books, chairs, and observe how much force is needed to move each of them. Ask them to write down their findings and explain the results. So this is the independent practice. Then wrap it up with letting them reflect on what they have learned about force and motion. Now, if you are teaching maths, if you are teaching your students about how to like multiply two-digit numbers, so the anticipatory set could be something like that. Show them an everyday situation like shopping, like if one item costs rupees 15 and you need four of them, how much will you pay in total? Then explain them the objective. Today we'll learn how to multiply two-digit numbers. This will help us solve real-world problems like calculating the total cost of the items while purchasing from a store. Then in the input or the instruction phase, demonstrate how to multiply two-digit numbers step by step on your board, whiteboard, or whatever, using the example of 15 multiplied by 4. Break it down into smaller steps showing how to multiply the ones and the tens digits. Then like in the modeling phase again, you like show them how to solve this problem, walk through the multiplication problem, explaining each part out aloud, like first multiply the ones, then the tens, and then finally add the partial products. Then in the guided practice, tell them, let's work on solving another problem together. Present another multiplication problem, like something like 23 times 3, and solve it as a class, asking students to help with each step. Then, like, end the check for understanding, like, ask them questions like, what's the next step? What happens when we multiply these numbers? Ensure students understand each part of the process before moving on. Then end the independent practice where the students do it by themselves, like assign a few similar problems for the students, like to solve them independently and check their work afterwards. So this is how you can like make your lesson plans using the Madeline Hunter lesson plan. Now, next comes the 5 e-learning model. This is also a constructivist approach designed to engage students in the active learning. Each phase of the model promotes student-centered learning, where students build on their previous knowledge and engage with the new content through inquiry, exploration, and collaboration. This model is particularly useful for teaching in an interactive and an engaging way, even in our virtual classrooms. So the 5 E stand for engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Let's walk through each phase and how it contributes to a deep understanding of the concepts. So the first step is the engage phase. This phase is all about capturing students' attention. You want to activate their prior knowledge and spark curiosity about the new topic. Think of it as setting the stage for learning. Then in the explore phase, students actively explore the new concept. They engage in hands on activities, work in groups, and discover ideas through direct experience. Then end the explain phase, like after exploration, like explain them like what they have learned. This is where you consolidate their knowledge, and you as the teacher can step in to clarify and guide their understanding. Then in the elaborate phase, students extend their understanding by applying the new concepts to different situations. So this helps deepen their comprehension and allows them to make connections to the real world. Then finally, in the evaluate phase, students reflect on their learning. This can involve self-assessments, peer feedbacks, or formal assessments. So the goal here is to measure understanding and ensure the concepts have been fully grasped. Now let me give you an example how you can implement this 5 e-learning model in math. Like if you are teaching about, say for example, about perimeter, area and perimeter to your students. So first in the engage phase, draw a simple rectangle on the board and asks, like if we were to build a fence around this field, how would we measure how long the fence needs to be? Then in the explore phase, provide students with rulers, let them measure the sides of the shapes and find the total length of the boundary, which is nothing but the perimeter. Then in the explain phase, have students explain the process of measuring and adding the sides. Now here you clarify by showing the formula for perimeter and explaining how it applies to different shapes. Then in the elaborate phase, ask students to solve word problems involving perimeter, such as designing a garden or finding the amount of fencing needed for their field. Then in the evaluate phase, you can give them some problems to calculate the perimeter of the various shapes, or give them something like a project where they have to measure objects around their home and find out the perimeter of those objects. Now, let's see how you can incorporate this 5 e-learning model in English. So if you are teaching your students to write complete sentences. So in the engage phase, you can start with an incomplete sentence on the board, like the cat. And you can ask students, what could we add to make this a complete sentence? In the explore phase, provide students with fragments and ask them to turn that into complete sentences by adding subjects or predicates. Let them work in groups or independently and share their ideas. Then in the explain phase, students share their complete corrected sentences and you explain the rules of the subject, verb, and the predicate that makes a sentence complete. Then in the elaborate phase, ask students to write a short paragraph ensuring that each sentence is complete. Here they can peer review each other's work for sentence structure. Then in the evaluate phase, give students a worksheet, give them some questions with sentence fragments and ask them to turn them into complete sentences. You can also assess their paragraph writing for sentence structure. Now let's see how we can implement this 5 e-learning model for science. For instance, you are teaching students about life cycle or life cycle of a butterfly or frog, whatever. So in the engage phase, show a picture of a butterfly and ask how does this butterfly starts its life? What happens before it can fly? In the explore phase, provide students with diagrams of different life cycles like the butterfly or the frog. Let them explore how living things grow and change over time, noting the different stages. Then in the explain phase, students explain the stages of the life cycle and their own words. Here you clarify key terms like egg, larva, pupa, adult, and how these terms fit into the life cycles of different species. Then in the elaborate phase, ask students to draw or create a model of the life cycle of a plant or an animal. They can represent like their work to the class, like explaining each stage in detail. Then in the evaluate phase, assess students' understanding with a quiz on life cycle stages or have them complete a diagram of a life cycle with labels and descriptions. So this is about the 5 e-learning model and how you can implement this model in different subjects. Now that we have explored other strategies, let's dive into the I do, we do, and you do method, a simple yet effective approach for teaching that helps uh, guide students from teacher-led instruction to independent practice. So this strategy is perfect for scaffolding learning, particularly in our virtual classes, where students may need gradual support to become confident with new concepts. So the first is the I do phase. So in this phase, which is nothing but I do, the modeled phase, the teacher models the task or concept while explaining the thought process uh, pr- loudly. Then comes the we do phase, which is nothing but the guided phase, where the teacher and the students work together on a similar problem. The teacher continues to guide students, asking questions and prompting participation. So, this collaborative approach helps students practice what they have just seen with support. Think of this as a team effort. Then comes the you do phase, where students practice on their own. So by this time, they should feel more comfortable and confident in their ability to solve the problems independently. So the teacher monitors the progress, providing feedback and support wherever necessary. So this is about the I do, we do, and the you do strategy. You can apply this strategy in various subjects, various concepts, whatever you teach. Now that we have discussed different strategies for lesson plannings, let's move on to some practical tips that can help you create more effective and engaging lesson plans for your classrooms. So keep the students' need at the center. Keep your lessons student centered. Whether you are teaching math, science, or English, it's essential to consider the learning levels, abilities, and backgrounds of your students when planning a lesson. And start with clear objectives. Make sure that your lesson objectives are specific and measurable. And then plan interactive activities even in your virtual classrooms. Like engagement can be challenging, but you can still make lessons interactive by asking questions or having students explain concepts in their own words. Then be flexible and like ready to adapt. So as our virtual classrooms can present unexpected challenges, from connectivity issues to students struggling with the material. So be prepared to adapt your lesson plan to these challenges and plan your lesson for different learning styles. We have different diverse like students with diverse learning styles. So plan your incorporate some strategies for each type of learner in your lesson. Now, as we have discussed, like teaching in rural schools, it's crucial to adapt your lesson plans to fit to the students' specific needs and resources which are available to them. So, the goal is to ensure that lessons are accessible, meaningful, and engaging despite any challenge they may face in terms of resources or exposure. So, consider about the limited resources, like these students might not have access to technology or materials like books, computers, or the internet outside of their classrooms. Even within the classroom, they share a single screen, which can limit interaction. So consider how you can adapt to this type of classroom, how you can like improve interaction and make the class engaging. and then use relatable examples. Like one of the best ways to engage rural students is by using examples and context that they can relate from their daily lives. Then focus on practical applications. So these students like benefit from lessons that emphasize practical real life applications of the concepts they are learning. Now, one of the most important things as teachers we can do is recognize that each student is unique with different learning styles, strengths, and needs. So, this is where differentiation and lesson planning comes in. So, differentiation ensures that we address the diverse learning needs of all students, fostering an inclusive environment where every child can succeed. So, create your lesson plans like which caters to various learning abilities. So whether students learn best by saying, hearing, or doing, like differentiation in your lesson plans, ensure that no student is left behind. Then in today's virtual teaching environment, integrating like technology into your lesson plans isn't just beneficial, it's also essential. So, technology offers innovative ways to engage students and make our lessons more interactive and impactful. So, even in rural classrooms with limited resources, smart use of technology can enhance learning experience for students sharing a single screen. Then, time management is one of the most crucial aspects of an effective lesson plan. So, like in our virtual classrooms, so it becomes even more important to structure your lessons in a way that maximizes learning within the available time. So, by breaking lessons into manageable segments and allocating time wisely, you ensure that your students stay engaged and that the learning objectives are met. Now that we have discussed the importance of planning, how to plan lesson plans, it's crucial to understand that the lesson plan is not a rigid blueprint. Instead, it should be flexible and adaptable based on how students are responding. Monitoring student reactions and gathering feedback will help you adjust your approach to ensure maximum learning. So, after observing student reaction and collecting feedback, be ready to adjust your lesson plans. Like this could mean like revisiting previous concepts or offering more examples or even changing your teaching approach altogether. So, as volunteer teachers, we are always looking for tools that make our like lesson planning easier, faster, and more effective. So, today I'm excited to introduce you to a tool that can revolutionize your planning process, a chatbot specifically designed to assist you in lesson planning. So, here you just need to like the link for this chatbot will be shared in the chat box. So just you need to enter the lesson or the concept you are teaching and for which grade you are teaching. And you can see over here, like I've just entered like area and perimeter for grade 6, and you'll get a complete lesson plan for area and perimeter, like how what you can do in the engage phase, what you can do in the explore phase, what are the like what you can do as in the I do phase and the you do and the we do phase. Everything all together you can get over here. Similarly, like if you are teaching a science here, like as I have mentioned, water for grade 6, just about water for grade 6. So here it has also given me an experiment like for grade 6, like water cycle, how you can explain about all of this. So the benefits of the chatbot are like it simplifies the task of creating structured, well organized, like lesson plans. So it acts like a digital guide, like walking you through the essential components such as objective materials, activities, and then even the assessment part. So think of it as having a virtual assistant that prompts you with the key questions and suggestions to help you design effective lesson plans, especially when you are short on time and unsure where to start. So like it saves your time. So this chatbots help you to streamline the process. Then it can give you personalized like it can give you pro support and the resources whatever you need for your lessons. Like even it can give you like tailored suggestions based on whatever input you are giving. So before we conclude today's session, I'd like to leave you with a powerful quote from Benjamin Franklin. So, this quote perfectly captures the essence of what we have been discussing throughout this session on lesson planning. So, tell me and I forget. This reminds us that simply delivering information isn't enough. Students may hear what we say, but they might not retain it for long. Teach me and I remember. When we move beyond telling and focus on teaching, students begin to absorb and understand the material better. Involve me and I learn. This is where the magic happens, where students are actively involved through hands on activities, discussions, and inquiry based learning. They truly learn. Involvement leads to deeper understanding and long lasting retention. So, this quote is a reminder that as teachers, our goal should always be to involve students in their learning journey, whether it's through inquiry based strategies, the 5E model, or the Maitline Hunters framework. We should aim to create lessons where students take an active role. So, as we move forward with creating lesson plans, let's remember that our ultimate goal is to involve students in ways that make learning meaningful and impactful. Let's aim not only to teach but to inspire and involve every student, no matter what the challenges or the environment is. Thank you so much for joining today.